Assalamu alaikum, everyone. The topic for today is essentially the interview that people have to go through in order to get into a PhD program. There were certain questions and concerns raised, about that, what to say during the interview, what to avoid, how to prepare for the interview, essentially. So let's start with the basics first. It's these are very simple, basic things, but they're important. When you receive an email from a professor that they're interested in interviewing you, just make sure that you double check the date and the time, especially if they are in a different country, and make sure that you understand the time zone over there. Like I live in New Zealand, I got interviewed by a professor in the US, and the time difference was massive. They said that it is going to be such and such time according to EST time, whatever that is. So I had to, just double check a few things, and I had to Google, the time difference and things like that. And eventually I ended up getting interviewed at 1 in the morning, like my time, 1 in the morning. According to the professor's time, it was, I think, I don't quite remember, but I think it was 11 or 10 a.m., something like that. Yeah, but for me, it was 1 in the morning. So I was sitting right here getting interviewed. Yeah. So anyway, basic stuff. Important that you make sure that you double check the date and time, and obviously you are on time. It's best to just log in. Normally they conduct these interviews on Zoom. So it's best that you log in, maybe 5 to 10 minutes before time rather than keeping them waiting. Yeah, next we will discuss panelists. Obviously, they are an essential part of an interview. So, panelists. Panelists, as I said, they're an extremely important part of the interview. Normally, it is a panel interview anyway. I did something extremely silly. Don't be like me. What I did was that I walked into my very first PhD interview. When I say walked into, what I mean is when I logged into Zoom, I was expecting just one professor to be there, but there were three people sitting there. So I got a bit confused, but I just accepted that, look, it's my mistake. I should have asked this question, that is it going to be just one person or is it going to be a panel interview? It was my first interview. Yeah, because when I was doing my master's dissertation, my master's thesis, I got interviewed by just one person, but that was master's, not PhD. So it was just one professor who conducted the interview. He approved my proposal, and we started the master's level research project. So I thought that it would be the same, if for a PhD program as well, which is quite silly, I know. So yeah, don't be like me. Don't do that. Just make sure that you ask that question. If it's a panel interview, how many people are going to be there? Because what happens is that before the interview, it's essential that you read some of their work. Like the panelists, if there are three professors who are going to be interviewing you, just make sure that you read their work. And when you go there, maybe you can try to form some links between what you want to do and what you read from their work. As I always say, it's important to create these links. Yeah. So that's why it's important to ask that question, that is it going to be just one person or is it going to be more than one person? And normally it's a panel interview if it's a PhD candidacy interview. Yeah, and the next up, what we'll do is that we'll talk a little about the actual presentation, as to what should be the content of your actual presentation once the interview starts. Yeah, getting on with the actual content of the presentation. Well, you see, there are many questions around that. People ask, what to talk about, what should be the number of slides, etc., etc. Unfortunately, there's no fixed format. Ideally, you should greet the panelists, introduce yourselves briefly, and get on with your work. Jump into your work immediately. That's ideal. But I think it's best to set the rules early. You can let the professors know that this is how I have prepared. If you have slides, that's fine. Some people just note down the main points and then they talk about those points. So that's also good. Just explain the format to them. As long as you are very, very clear and there's clarity in your conversation and the structure of the presentation, you should be fine. You just let them know that, after greeting them, of course, that this is what I prepared, this is what I'm going to talk about. Also, you have to give them an opportunity to ask questions, so you can let them know that you can ask questions at the end of the presentation, or if you're confident, you can just let them know that, whenever, just stop me and ask whatever you want to ask, and so that they are also clear and you're also clear. So that's essential. And then most of your conversation is going to be, of course, around your research idea and the research work that you want to do in the future. Now this is a tricky one because in my experience, like when I got interviewed by my professor in the master's program, that was in New Zealand. So in New Zealand, UK, Australia, if you are applying to a PhD program or even a master's by research program, you need to have a proper research proposal. So obviously the conversation is slightly more technical. The interview questions are around specifically around the methodology. If you've chosen a specific method, then why have you chosen that specific method? Like for instance, I chose content analysis for my master's dissertation. So the professor, he kept asking me, if okay, you have chosen your content analysis, how are you going to analyze the content? Why have you chosen content analysis? So most of the conversation, as I said, was a little technical, was a bit more difficult, I'd say. Now if you go to the American universities, when I got interviewed there, I wasn't really asked about methodology specifically because there's no research proposal. In America, you can get into a PhD program solely based on your statement of purpose and solely based on the research idea. I say idea, not the proposal that you propose. You don't really have to have a well drafted or well thought out research proposal as such. So the conversation is still about your research interests and where do you see yourself going in the future, but it's not that technical. It's a bit vague. They're happy with your ideas. They just want to know that there's clarity in your thoughts and you know exactly what you want to do and why you are doing it. So yeah, that's something that you must keep in mind. Number of slides, again, as I said, number of slides. Maybe the best approach would be that you keep in mind the time that they've given for the interview. Like for example, if they've told you that they are going to be with you for 30 minutes, then that means you have to prepare according to 30 minutes, keeping in mind that you have to give them time to ask questions as well. If you're not giving them enough time to ask questions, then that's not good. So yeah, whatever content you can fit into 30 minutes for that specific interview or whatever time has been given to you, then it's best that you prepare according to that. So number of slides, it's up to you really. Some people, as I said, they don't even prepare slides. They just have notes with them and then they talk, with the help of those notes. So it's up to you, as long as you're not straight off reading, from somewhere, from a book or from your slides or whatever. If you have a notebook in your hand, just don't do that. One thing that I've noticed is that if you mention the names of the scholars that you have read, then it really creates a good impression. Like, for example, my area is intercultural communicative competence. So I spoke about people like Jonathan Newton, Corin Seals, Byram, and Bonnie Norton, all of these people. So I noticed that they really liked it. And my success rate has been 100%. Wherever I got the interview, I got into the program, basically. Wherever I didn't get the interview, success rate over there is not 100%. Sometimes I got a denial, sometimes I got into that program, but wherever I got the interview, I got in. So I'm assuming that, naming the scholars and their work, it creates a good impression. They start, they get this idea that you are a well-read person, and you're not afraid of reading, basically. You're not afraid of exploring, and you have the ability to form connections between other people's work and your work. I talk about connections and links a lot because this is what academics are after, essentially, that do you have the ability, yes, to put things in boxes, compartmentalization, but do you also have the ability to decompartmentalize and form links wherever required? So yeah, I will very quickly recap. Basics, get the basics right, please. Just make sure that you know the exact day, exact time. If you're in a different country, which you probably will be, just understand the time zone and the time difference. Double check everything. Be there before time. It's always best to log in, say, 5 to 10 minutes before the start of the actual interview. Creates a good impression. Panelists, yes, don't be like me. Just make sure that you know your panelists quite well. Read some of their work, and if you can form connections, do that. The actual content of the presentation, there's no fixed format. It's good to set the rules, however, early. If you want them to ask questions at the end of the presentation, just let them know. If you're not feeling very confident, let them know that I'm feeling a little nervous, so maybe keep the questions for later. Your conversation is mainly going to be about your research work, what you want to do, why you're doing, why you're wanting to do what you want to do, and how are you going to get there. Depends where you're applying. If you're applying to a university in the US, then it's going to be the interview is going to be slightly easier as compared to UK, New Zealand, Australia, where there is a full a research proposal, and then the questions are mainly going to be around your methodology and perhaps literature review as well. So all of those things. Mention the names of the scholars that you've read. It's critical. Creates a good impression, and it shows that you know your field and you're serious about it. Yeah, hopefully this helps. If there's an interview coming, I hope some of the content of this video is going to help you. Let me know in the comments if there is something that you want me to add. I'm happy to answer whatever I can. Thank you very much, and look after yourselves. Allah Hafiz.